This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, America's anger epidemic.
Anger is a normal emotion. It's part of what it means to be human, and it has many values for us in terms of not only our own personal well-being, but in our relationships.
Why a little anger goes a long way when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
It was a disaster on so many levels. A meteorological disaster, a political disaster, a response disaster.
The fury of powerful hurricanes. Then,
every Kickstarter project is on its own too small for these big businesses to care about. But it ends up that collectively we can make a lot of noise.
The benefits of crowdfunding online. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
Americans are angry. There's little doubt about that. Road rage is nothing new. Confrontations over face masks, racism, and politics are everyday occurrences. Name-calling on social media has become a national pastime. In fact, the fastest growing emoji on Facebook is the angry face. But the increase in anger doesn't surprise some psychologists. It's a common way to respond to uncertainty and fear.
On an evolutionary level, people have anger in them. It's a way to kind of rile them up in cases where they have to defend themselves or fight back. It's part of the fight or flight response. It's obviously tied closely to fear, actually, as well, because that's also part of the fight or flight response.
That's Dr. Jean Kim, assistant professor of psychiatry at George Washington University.
Ambiguity is an uncomfortable state for a lot of people where you don't know what's happening and you're not sure what to do. So that feeling of uncertainty can make people afraid and then also in turn towards anger if they feel like they can't understand or process something, because at least it gives you that feeling of certainty maybe.
We're hardwired for it, because of its survival value, and it's the emotional component of aggressive behavior. And aggressive behavior is highly functional, but it does energize us and it does help us overcome obstacles. It also has a defensive function, defensive in the response to perceived threat, and it puts us in a posture where we are antagonistically disposed.
Dr. Ray Navaco is professor of psychological sciences at the University of California at Irvine.
Anger is a normal emotion. It's part of what it means to be human, and it has many values for us in terms of not only our own personal well-being, but in our relationships. Anger has communicative value. We often don't get around to saying things about things that have troubled us until we get sufficiently angry to do so. When people have been in circumstances of oppression and victimization, anger can convert that into a sense of taking some action and doing things to overcome those oppressive circumstances. So it has this empowering role, and that's been the history of social movements and from the beginning of time, particularly when people have a sense that things can get better. You see anger manifested as opposed to fear.
However, while anger may sometimes be functional, we usually think of it as anything but, especially when it's so pervasive.
Anger is not good when it happens too frequently, when it happens with much too high an intensity, when it happens too quickly, when it lasts too long, and when it's manifested in aggressive and particular violent behavior. When it's dysregulated, it becomes problematic. And that it pertains not just to violent behavior, but it also pertains to our personal health and our relationships and our work performance.
However, sometimes people can't take their foot off the anger accelerator, especially if they have a trauma history.
A great many people have serious anger difficulties. People that are in psychiatric institutions or people who are in correctional facilities, and people walking around in everyday life not being detained by any authority, who have serious anger difficulties. Many of them have had serious trauma history of either abuse in the family, or violence victimization, or combat exposure, or a serious accident, motor vehicle accident, or exposure to a natural disaster. And trauma histories will potentiate anger dysregulation.
Another problem, Kim says, in some ways, anger is addictive.
These people literally get a rise when they're angry. It kind of floods their systems where there's certain hormones and neurotransmitters like dopamine. They get a certain rush when they're revved up and primed to fight, as with anger. So it could, for some people, almost become kind of addictive, where they feel that dopamine rush to kind of get them going and let out some steam. So for some people, it's a little bit dangerous.
But if anger makes us feel good, so good that for some people it's addictive, why do we often feel so bad about it once we've cooled off?
What happens is, in the moment, it's an impulse control override. You just kind of lash out, and your primitive brain takes over, your emotional brain, when you're in the moment of an anger rush. But then consequences happen. You do something that you weren't thinking about. The more rational part of your brain didn't think it through. So then afterwards, you may have to deal with the fallout of what you've done, which is often not so great.
When we start to feel consequences too often, it's time to back off. But Kim says a lot of people never see themselves as a bomb waiting to explode.
The key is to realize, without any major issue or problem, that it is a problem, admitting that it's something to work on and focus on. So denial doesn't help. If people are telling you, you're kind of flying off the handle a lot, or they keep bringing up with you that this is an issue, that you're losing your temper, it's something that you do need to focus on and work on. And that during those calmer moments when you're in your more rational state of mind, that you can work on it and try to step back on what's triggering it and what's setting you off, and how to prevent that from overtaking you.
You have to have some awareness of some troublesome state beginning to get activated at a level where it's going to create problems. So the first step with regard to anger control is self-monitoring. It's raising our own sense of awareness of when anger is too frequent, too intense, lasts too long, etc. When you find yourself getting annoyed and irritated a lot, right? A bell's got to go off and say, wait a minute, this isn't good for me, right? So what we're doing with regard to helping people have very serious difficulties with anger regulation and violent behavior in particular, right, is helping the person do a cost analysis. Okay? This isn't good for me. People will change or make efforts to change when they can begin to compute that the cost of staying the same are higher than the cost of trying to be different.
And then once you do recognize it, figuring out what is it exactly, the moments that are triggering you, that are setting you off, and identifying those triggers. And that's how you can learn how to prevent it or recognize when it's starting up in the moment, and then figuring out how to deal with that, which is oftentimes is to take breaks, step outside the situation, just a few moments pause off is what you need to just not have it lead to something worse.
Navaco advocates 3 steps to heading off anger that all involve self-evaluation. First, make sure to have an appreciation of all that's good in your life. Second, appraise your relationships. If there's strong relationships with good people, they'll act as a buffer to eruptions. And third, check your aspirations. If you have your sights on causes bigger than yourself, you'll temper your anger. None of that is easy, but Navaco says the hardest part is recognizing you have to get started. You can find out more about all our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
Research shows that for people seeking health benefits from food, weight loss tops the list, and every year 45 million Americans go on a diet. Registered dietitian Courtney Romano, health advisor for the California Table Grape Commission, has some grape tips.
Maintaining a healthy weight is important for good health. A first step is to find ways to eat more fruits and vegetables every day. For example, juicy sweet grapes are a tasty choice without the added fat, salt, sugar, and calories found in many processed snacks. Keep a bowl of grapes handy for anytime snacking and freeze grapes for a tasty, cool treat.
Grapes from California are in season now. A 3/4 cup serving has just 90 calories, no fat, and no cholesterol. Grapes are a natural source of beneficial antioxidants and other polyphenols. Visit grapesfromcalifornia.com to learn more.
Nearly 18 million people in the United States have atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema. Eczema can happen almost anywhere on the skin, including the face, neck, and arms, but it can appear differently for everyone. Mom, author, singer, and fashion designer Jessica Simpson talks about her mild to moderate eczema for the first time.
As a kid, I first noticed eczema on the back of my arms and legs. I would cover up my skin because I felt self-conscious anytime I was experiencing an eczema flare. I've tried to manage my eczema over the years with various over-the-counter lotions and creams, but it got much worse during my last pregnancy. As a busy working mom of 3, I don't always have time to focus on my eczema, so I finally talked to my doctor and was prescribed Eucrisa. I'm happy to say that my eczema improves when I use it. I truly encourage patients and caregivers to have the eczema conversation and talk to their doctor about potential treatment options that may be right for them.
Jessica has been using Eucrisa Crisaborol Ointment 2%, the first and only 100% steroid-free prescription ointment for the treatment of mild to moderate eczema in patients as young as 3 months old. Eucrisa works both at and below the skin surface to treat eczema. The specific way Eucrisa works is not well defined. Prescription Eucrisa is for topical use only in patients 3 months of age and older. Do not use Eucrisa if you are allergic to crisaborol or any of the ingredients in Eucrisa. Allergic reactions may occur at or near the application site. These can be serious and may include hives, itching, swelling, and redness. The most common side effect is application site pain, such as burning or stinging. Eucrisa is for use on skin, topical use only. Do not use Eucrisa in your eyes, mouth, or vagina. Ask your doctor about Eucrisa. Learn more at eucrisa.com or by calling 1-866-EUCRISA. Again, that's EUCRISA.com.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Radio Health Journal is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
It's continuing to be a challenge, especially for scheduling, and of course everyone wants a stay-at-home buddy, and it's taking longer than usual to adopt from us, but we're doing our best.
Why more people are getting a pet in the pandemic.
Then the questions kids ask about COVID.
How long is this going to go on? I'm afraid I'm never going to see my friends again. Are you going to die, Grandpa? Or is my friend going to die? Am I going to die? They ask that question.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.